The first pet I ever had wasn't a dog or a cat. It was a fish. There was an aquarium store in town that offered a free fish to kids who got good grades, and when I finally got my first report card, I persuaded my mom to take me to pick one out. She got a fish bowl, and I selected what the fish store called a tiger fish, which I was very excited to watch that first day. But the next morning, my tiger fish was dead. And we had to do the terrible act of scooping him out of the bowl and flushing him down the toilet. So long, little fish. And because I was crying and upset, my mom called the aquarium and the owner explained that you were supposed to treat the water with special drops to make it habitable and that you really needed a water filter. You couldn't just get water out of your kitchen sink and put it in a fish bowl because it wasn't correctly balanced. My poor little pet had died because we'd essentially poisoned him. The guy at the store offered us another fish, but also told us we should really think about buying an aquarium. This meant not just investing in the aquarium itself, but also gravel, decorations, lighting, and maybe even a sucker fish that could clean out all the grime that would inevitably form. My mom was not about to go and spend a bunch more money just so I could have another free fish, so she declined. A year or two later, I got a turtle, and ironically enough, we wound up buying an aquarium with fish for him. But those fish weren't there to be pets. They were there for him to eat. Being a fish is a rough life, I guess. But if you're a pet fish, things can be pretty good for you if you've got an owner who's willing to invest in your well-being. So today, we're going to talk about all the different ways in which marketers target fish owners and why there's lots of opportunity for this segment to grow. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. The population of fish owners in the United States is pretty small. According to data from the American Veterinary Medical Association, or AVMA, only 3.4 million households, or 2.6%, own fish. Another report from the American Pet Products Association says that it's actually a lot higher than that. 12.5 million households with an average of 12 fish each, or 139 million domestic fish in general. The report also says that 17% of adults own a fish tank, which seems kind of high based on my own experience visiting friends and family, because that's 1 in 6 people. But, maybe St. Louis is an area where fish aren't as popular as pets. I don't know. Either way, fish are the third most commonly owned pet after dogs and cats, but they're definitely in the category of what a friend of mine used to call throwaway pets. The sort of pets you buy to look at, but don't get attached to when they quickly pass away. And in fact, if you go to a pet store like PetSmart or Petco, you'll see a lot of dead fish in the tanks or displays. Now, I don't want to sound judgmental here, but in truth, there's just not a lot of regard for these little creatures' lives because, well, they're fish. They're not warm and fuzzy and interesting the way dogs and cats are. They don't usually get to go to the vet, and people don't generally go out of their way to feed fish gourmet fish food or buy them exciting new toys or even think about taking them with them on trips. But people can still spend a lot of money when they want to own fish, and pet stores and aquarium specialists definitely have plenty of products to offer them. Let's start with the basic habitat for a fish. Now, a standard fish bowl will run you about $10 to $15, but like I said, it's really not a very good home for fish. It's small. You have to treat the water carefully with chemicals to keep it livable. The oxygen in the water can run out if you're not changing the water regularly. The temperature is hard to control, and it's really only suitable for something like a goldfish that you want to keep in there for a few hours while you're cleaning out the aquarium. So, responsible pet stores will tell you not to buy a fish bowl. You need an aquarium. And the cost of setting one up for the first time is going to be at least $100 because you need to buy not just the aquarium itself, but also all of the things that go with it. A lid, a filter, lighting, gravel, decorations, and cleaning supplies. Unless you buy a miniature aquarium specifically made for a betta fish, which is a popular type of fish that can live in a smaller aquarium because it gets much of its air from the oxygenated surface of the water, you're probably also going to need a stand because aquariums are very heavy once you fill them up with multiple gallons of water, and they also need a place to house the components that run their pumps and filters. And there's even more involved if you have a saltwater tank for tropical fish. Oh, and did I mention that tanks can develop leaks and sometimes need to be replaced before they can create water damage in your home? So considering that fish are pretty much just there to look at, and it's really hard to have a strong personal attachment to them, this seems like an awful lot of upfront expense and effort for a pet you can't walk, pet, or train to do tricks. And there's actually even more to consider. It's very easy for a first-time fish owner to spend anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to set up an appropriate fish habitat, which seems like a lot given that most freshwater fish can be purchased for just a couple of bucks at most. And another selling point for the larger aquariums is that they don't need to be cleaned or checked as often because they have more water to help support the ecosystem of bacteria or algae that will also be living in the water with your fish. So, on the one hand, cleaning a 10-gallon tank is a much easier task than cleaning a 55-gallon tank. But you have to clean a 10-gallon tank every week, whereas you only have to clean a 55-gallon tank once a month. You can buy a more expensive filtration system to reduce cleaning, but they're also more expensive to operate in terms of filters and electricity costs, and of course, more expensive to replace when they go out. The type of fish also matter. Goldfish are cheap and pretty, but they poop a lot and leave a lot of uneaten food behind. Both have to be cleaned out of the water regularly or the water will become poisonous. Betta fish don't leave as much waste and are very pretty, but they're expensive and the males are very aggressive and will kill other bettas as well as many other species of fish that they deem a threat. Responsible fish owners also need to monitor the chemical levels of the water and change out the gravel and decorations on rotation schedules because these accumulate debris and algae that can impact the fish. When tanks are properly maintained, they don't stink and the fish tend to thrive. But when they're not well maintained, the tanks can get cloudy, the fish can become lethargic or even die, and algae can take over, pretty much ruining the entire habitat. Fish also need to be carefully matched to the environment. Some species of fish work well together, others are not well suited to particular setups, or being put into a confined area with other species. And so you can spend a lot of time getting the balance of aquatic life correct. There are over 700 species of freshwater fish alone, and some of them, like goldfish, can live a decade or two under the proper conditions. One thing fish owners should be aware of is where their fish came from. Most freshwater fish are bred captive, but unfortunately, quite a few exotic fish that wind up in pet stores are caught wild or harvested from coral reefs. This is not only bad for the fish, but bad for their ecosystems. Buying breeds that are taken directly from the wild is something responsible fish owners should avoid. Now, I'm not telling you anything a knowledgeable aquarium specialist wouldn't tell you at this point. The reality is that fish are not the low-maintenance pets they appear to be, which might account for their lack of popularity compared to dogs and cats. It feels like the aquarium industry does everything it can to make people not want to be fish owners. But when I hear a consumer problem, I think marketing, and that's where I want to focus the rest of our discussion because there are some obvious opportunities for fish to become more popular pets and to grow the $15 billion global market around aquarium ownership. Now for this, I turned to a summary report from the American Pet Products Association, or APA, which talks about modern trends from some extensive research conducted on the topic of growing the aquarium market. And one of the most prominent recommendations in the report is to position fish not as pets, but as a hobby. This absolutely seems like a great pivot because, as we've noted, fish are expensive to care for and a lot of work, and also some activities like balancing chemical levels, making sure you have the right size aquarium and decor, and of course, matching the right species together are things that hobbyists like to do. And positioning fish ownership as a hobby rather than an obligation to care for a living thing would change the perception of fish ownership in 3 ways. First, it would encourage fish owners to be ready for the upfront costs because hobbyists are used to having to spend a big amount to get started in the hobby that they're interested in. This would avoid the sort of buying decision-making that leads people to cheap out on their aquariums or supplies so their fish won't thrive. Second, it would discourage fish owners from thinking about fish as a throwaway pet, which is a very positive thing both for the owners and the fish because it would encourage the creation of habitats where the fish can thrive instead of being sent to a watery grave through your household plumbing. Hobbyists tend to enjoy the activity of caring for the things they're into and maximizing their chances of success. Fish are a natural fit for that way of thinking. Third, it would actually result in bigger sales for the aquarium stores and grow the market more significantly out of pet stores and into a hobbyist category. This is tremendously important if the aquarium sector wants to grow because hobbies are addictive and highly engaging, and it would result in fish owners buying larger aquariums, better equipment, and more fish over time. Collections are also important to hobbyists, and fish can be quite attractive when they're photographed, which would lead to greater social media engagement and general interest. It might also help the hobby to break into popular culture in the same way that collectibles like Pokemon cards and Labubus have, greatly increasing the market potential. Now, lest you think pop culture has no influence on an industry as mature as aquariums, one of the most popular types of fish for families to purchase is the clownfish, the same one you see in Finding Nemo. Before that movie came out, clownfish weren't nearly as popular as they were afterwards. Regal blue tangs, which are the pretty species of blue marine fish that Dory is in the same movie, are also quite popular. Both of these species of fish require a saltwater reef aquarium, which is an intensive sort of aquarium to own and often quite large and quite expensive. In other words, not the kind of thing you'd buy for a child who loves Finding Nemo, but definitely the sort of thing a hobbyist could get into. The report suggests that, as with dogs and cats, millennials are the generational cohort most likely to own fish, but Gen Z is growing in interest as well. And these younger pet owners are also likely to cross over into reptile ownership, in part because the equipment and care routine is largely the same even if the habitats are different, and in part because aquatic turtles, which can coexist with some species of freshwater fish, are among the most popular reptile pets. The APA report also talks about how now half of fish owners buy gifts for their pets, particularly saltwater fish owners. Now, you know what? I honestly couldn't figure out what this meant at first. Who buys a gift for a fish? And a search online for gifts for pet fish turned up fish-related gifts for aquarium fans, not gifts for the fish themselves. But as I went a little deeper, I discovered that the gifts often mean new aquarium decorations, maybe higher quality fish food, more sophisticated LED lighting to make the fish look even more attractive in their aquarium setting. So in other words, hobbyist stuff, not the typical gifts for pets that are intended to make the animals themselves happy. And some of the products recommended as splurges for aquarium owners include things designed to make the hobby easier, like automatic fish feeders, specialized cleaning and scraping tools, smart heaters, dedicated gravel vacuum cleaners, specialized camera lenses to take pictures of fish inside aquariums, and refractometers to measure saltwater salinity. Most of these products are in the $40 to $100 range, and among the hobbyists who call themselves reefers because they're particularly invested in their aquarium setups, there's no shame in spending that kind of money to make their hobby more worthwhile. Now, I initially wondered if there's much of a market for a home aquarium cleaning service, but the cost and frequency of required cleanings seems like this would be far too pricey for most people that are keeping fish as pets, and it'd be of limited interest to hobbyists. But there is a market for self-cleaning fish tanks, and these range from about $70 to $90 for a 3.5-gallon tank built for betta fish to hundreds of dollars for more involved kits. It's interesting because most of these are built around the idea of using plants and soil to not only clean the water naturally, but also fertilize the plants themselves through an aquaphonic process. I mean, hey, all that fish poop has got to go somewhere, right? In other words, there's an opportunity to cross over to people who love plants as well, which is a further way to grow and expand that market because indoor houseplants as an industry is worth around $21 billion and growing. And pairing fish with plants is such a natural way of extending both hobbies, I'm surprised it hasn't caught on yet. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been the Marketing Gateway. See you next time. So here's a reminder. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. According to Mental Health America, nearly 1 in 5 American adults will have a diagnosable mental health condition in any given year, and 46% of Americans will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their life. Half of those people will develop conditions by the age of 14. Mental health is something we all should take seriously. Please do not be afraid to seek help. You're not alone in your struggles, and if you know someone who's struggling with mental health conditions, please help in any way that you can. Sometimes all it takes is a simple text checking in on them, and it could end up saving their life. If you find yourself needing immediate help, please text or call the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. And if you would like to learn more or you need assistance in finding help, you can visit Mental Health America's website at mhanational.org. There's also an option on the page to donate if you feel so inclined, and I hope that you will.